Hey class, welcome to 241. This is just a little food for thought in reference to Beowulf. So I want to first start off by saying that Beowulf, like you read in the text, is they believe every bit of 1200 years old. And the first thing that we kind of see about it is that it's got a very kind of aggressive nature about it, in that it's a warrior's tale. Leaders back then were not necessarily the same leaders that we see today. Back then, Beowulf became the leader by being the strongest warrior, by lasting the longest, and by protecting his people. These days, obviously, our leaders are a little different. We shall see something like, well, if you look at current affairs, we've got people who are the best litigators, folks who are the best orators, and most people have a law degree of some sort. But they were generally not in the military, nor did they spend any time in combat, which works for us today in our democracy, but back then, in the time of Beowulf, that simply wasn't the way it was. About 1200 years ago, we believe that's when it was written. They found this writing a long time ago, but what we believe happened to it was somewhere the original text was found amongst rubble, and they kind of made a translation. So what happened was in the turn of right around the 50 AD, Roman Empire that was in control of Britain, and they spread Christianity everywhere. The Roman Empire. Constantine was the one that started spreading it, and so later on, in somewhere around 450 roughly AD, the Roman Empire pulled out of Britain and said, we're not really into this anymore, we're too far from home, and we're not getting much out of this. So they pulled the original Brexit, if you will. So not but a couple hundred years later, the Vikings, actually, that came over, where they pillaged, they raided, they were pagan in the sense that they had many gods, not just one, and they worshipped Odin, Thor. I mean, Loki was in there, so if you've seen the Thor movies, that is actually Norse gods from hundreds of years ago. And they're as real as they are to anyone now, obviously. So they worship them. And the Vikings came over and they destroyed the monasteries, and that was what they did. There's a series on History Channel about the Vikings. If you ever are really interested, I think I found it on Amazon and watched it all in about 2 days. It was pretty good. But essentially what they did was they believed that there was land over on the other side of the water. They sailed over. They were great navigators of the sea. They were great warriors. And if you read some of the stuff from Beowulf and the other stuff, they believed that when you died, you went to Valhalla, which is your reward for being such a great warrior. And so these days we have a belief in heaven, and if you do good deeds, Christianity says you go to heaven. Well, Vikings, they didn't mind dying, they didn't mind fighting, they didn't fear other people dying because they truly believed they were in a better place, and in a literal sense, that's what they believed. And so when they began to smash the monasteries, it wasn't because they hated Christianity necessarily, but because they were pillagers, and they found a lot of great things, lots of gold, golden cups, golden crosses, lots of things. They were not well read. They didn't believe really that reading and writing was necessary, but the monasteries at the time held a lot of the great texts, and so we believe that maybe the reason we don't have a whole lot from that time period is because it was smashed, destroyed, burned, pillaged, basically, by an aggressor. And so when we did find Beowulf, we were happy to find it. But the belief is that while this is a traditionally pagan story in nature, the way it's written, it's about pagans, it also includes a sense of Christianity because, as your text states, it's widely believed that it's from a single poet. It wasn't just pieced together. It was established. It reflects well-established Christian traditions. And so the conversion of the Germanic settlers in England had been largely completed during the 7th century. The Danish king, Hrothgar, his poet sings a song about the creation in lines 87 through 98. And so he does that, and it's reminiscent of another hymn in the book, The monster Grendel is said to be a descendant of Cain. Cain is clearly a Christian character. So there are allusions to God's judgment, to fate, but there's really nothing to any of the actual pagan deities. So if we heard about Thor, Odin, or anything like that, you'd think this was a pagan thing, but it's clearly Christian and written by Christian, but does it make sense? So if, let's say, was the story originally written by a Christian? Or do you think maybe it was written by a pagan and some Christians got a hold of it and kind of inserted things, as if to say, we're going to insert pieces of Christianity in here so that it sounds Christian. So was it a fluid kind of text, or was it written by many? And so that's kind of the question for our discussion board, and you can read that and kind of see what you think. And it's about the writing of it itself. So anyway, Beowulf is an interesting character for lots of reasons, but one thing that we notice with him is that he's very strong, and he lasts, and he doesn't fear death, and everything that he goes into seems to be for his people. He was a great leader. So there is a relationship with the kinsmen here, which is very significant, that they are loyal. Loyalty was one of the most important things during this time period for these people. And so, for example, if Beowulf was ever slain, then his people would have to avenge him. If somebody was killed, they would have to avenge that person. So it was an introduction to a man price and compensation. So you killed my man, now we're going to kill you, and that's just kind of how things worked. So that brings me to a point about one thing you'll see in this text. It's called a kenning. Kenning is a word that is two words, usually hyphenated, that take the place of one word. So for example, man price might just refer to revenge. The ocean road might be talking to the sea path that they take through the ocean to get where they need to go. And you'll see this a lot, these kennings. It's a big part of the writing, and what it does is essentially just kind of give the author a way to rhyme, or rhyme scheme, or whatever it is that he's trying to accomplish. He uses different words. Alright, so with that being said, I want to lead you all to the discussion board in Beowulf, and I want to make sure that you all are reading the text and that you're getting out of it what is intended. So what I did, first of all, is I gave you all a study guide. That study guide is simply for your edification. If you don't want to use it, please don't. But as you're reading, if you don't really understand what's happening and you can't comprehend and you're worried that later on the test you'll have forgotten what you read, I'd use the study guide because it'll be helpful for that reason. The other thing that I've done for you is I put an animation on. A lot of times just seeing the actions go with the play is a lot of help. The play, I'm sorry, it is not a play, it is a poem. But you can use it if you want to, but again, not required. All you are required to do is read the text, use the information in the discussion board, and you'll be good to go. So enjoy Beowulf for what it is. It is a very good story in and of itself. Make sure you're understanding it, and don't be ashamed to hop online to check some sort of extra sources that may help make you understand the play itself, the story. Alright folks, best of luck. Happy posting.